Welcome in, everybody. Ready to dive into a world most people only see in, well, let's be honest, kind of shady movies.
The political PR world, right?
Exactly. We've got All the Worst Humans, a tell-all memoir by this guy, Phil Elwood, who is right in the thick of it.
And this isn't like some boring PR textbook. Elwood's client list is nuts. We're talking seriously powerful figures, and some who are, shall we say, infamous.
Yeah, and since it's a memoir, we get his unfiltered thoughts, almost like we're flies on the wall.
Juicy.
So how does someone even become a, as Elwood calls himself, a PR hitman? His path is anything but straightforward. Picture this. College dropout.debatechamp. Ends up in D.C. almost by accident.
Right from the start, you see the skills that'll make him successful in PR. Debate, it's all about thinking on your feet, building arguments instantly, staying cool under pressure. Crucial in that world.
And he even admits early on that he was drawn to, like, the manipulative side of debate, which, in hindsight...
Yeah, a little ominous. But the story of how he lands in D.C. is where it gets good. So he's at a crossroads, right? Dropped out of college, and a friend, trying to help, gets him an interview at a strip club.
Not your typical career fair.
Totally. But it shows how this world really works, behind the scenes, so different from what we see.
And get this, it works. He lands an internship with Senator Moynihan. Talk about a crash course in power.
And this is where you see his instincts for PR kicking in. He climbs the ladder fast, going from low-level intern to handling some really big accounts.
And this is the same guy who later helps get a dictator's wife featured in Vogue. The connections he makes early on, they matter. Big time.
It's all about who you know, right? But even that early work, it's nothing compared to what comes next. Things take a turn when he joins this boutique PR firm in New York, Brown Lloyd James.
That's where he learns the art of what he calls no fingerprints. PR, working behind the curtain, pulling strings, making sure nobody can trace it back to the client.
And the clients. Let's just say they weren't your average politicians. We're talking about the Gaddafis.
Now we're getting into some serious intrigue. Okay, the Gaddafis. I mean, where do we even start with this? Elwood's first mission, if you can call it that, is a trip to Vegas with Muammar Gaddafi's son, Mutassim.
And he does not skimp on the details.
This is where you see how political PR goes way beyond press releases. Like, you're managing every tiny detail of a client's image, even their personal life, especially when things get a little, shall we say, yeah. And things get really messy in Vegas. He throws you right into the Bellagio, right? We're talking gambling debts piling up, garbage bags literally stuffed with cash. And Mutassim, who Elwood calls the doctor, is throwing tantrums left and right.
Oh, I remember this part. It's like something out of a movie.
The image of Elwood chasing after a dictator's son through a casino because, well, the son just blew a fortune at the roulette wheel. It's almost funny. But it shows the level of access these PR guys have. They're not just spinning stories. They're in the trenches.
And the lengths they go to cover things up. Elwood's putting everything on his company credit card, creating fake invoices, anything to keep the Gaddafi name out of it. Talk about no fingerprints.
Right. This is how these firms operate, behind the scenes, in the shadows. Masters of obfuscation, their real loyalty always seems to lie more with their client than, like, with the truth.
It can get murky, ethically speaking.
Yarker. But it's not all high roller antics and dodging casino security. Elwood gets caught up in the aftermath of the Lockerbie bombing.
Which, as a reminder to our listeners, this wasn't just some scandal. This was a horrific act of terrorism that killed hundreds of people, Americans among them.
And Elwood's job, to handle the PR fallout when Scotland decides to release the bomber on compassionate grounds.
Talk about a no-win situation.
This is where those ethical lines really get blurry. Even Elwood admits he's troubled by it, but he still goes ahead and spins the release as this humanitarian act. He's calling in favors from U.S. senators, doing damage control, whatever he can to control how it's perceived.
It's hard to even imagine being in that position, having to defend something so awful. It makes you question, like, how do these PR people live with themselves?
It's a question that clearly weighs on Elwood throughout the book. You see these swings between, like, cynicism and genuine moral struggle. And I think that's what makes his story so fascinating.
It's not black and white, that's for sure.
And it's not just individuals like Gaddafi that he's working with. His client list starts to include entire countries.
Countries?
Oh, yeah. He ends up masterminding this whole campaign to sabotage the U.S. bid to host the World Cup.
Why would he do that?
Because one of his other clients wanted to host it instead.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like textbook astroturfing, right? Creating this illusion of grassroots opposition to something when, in reality, it's all carefully orchestrated.
And Elwood is good at it.
Oh, he's good. Gets a resolution introduced in Congress, leaks it to the press, boom. Suddenly it looks like there's this huge groundswell of opposition to the U.S. hosting. It's kind of brilliant and kind of terrifying at the same time.
Right.
And he pulls off a similar move with Syria. Helps arrange for Asma al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad's wife, to be featured in Vogue.
Trying to portray her as this, like, stylish, modern first lady.
Exactly. The timing, though, couldn't have been worse. The article comes out right before the Arab Spring kicks off, shattering this carefully crafted image.
Talk about bad timing.
This wasn't just bad timing, though. It was a deliberate strategy. I mean, they were trying to whitewash the regime's image. It shows how PR can be used to obscure the truth and prop up some pretty brutal dictatorships.
And it takes a toll on Elwood, right? Doesn't he have that experience in Sarajevo?
Oh, yes. He goes on this trip to raise awareness about the Bosnian genocide, and it really forces him to confront the human cost of the work he does, like up close and personal.
That's heavy.
It's a huge turning point. He's been able to rationalize spinning for, corporations or whatever, but seeing firsthand the brutality of genocide, it shakes him.
And he's battling his own demons, too, right? The addiction, the risky behavior.
Yeah, like the pressure cooker of the world he's operating in is finally getting to him.
Well,
it makes you wonder, is this kind of work even sustainable? Can you live in that world of secrets and spin without it fundamentally changing you?
the question we're all asking, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of unsustainable, Elwood's time at Brown Lloyd James comes to a pretty abrupt end.
He gets fired.
And you'll never guess why.
Okay, why?
For being too honest with a reporter.
You're kidding.
I'm not. The irony, right? This guy spends years protecting secrets, burying the truth, and then he's the one who let something slip.
Wow. It's crazy how these things come back to bite you. You'd think that would be the wake-up call, right? Like, maybe time to find a new career path.
Nope.
Oh, no.
Elwood, he bounces around different firms, but he ends up in even more ethically questionable situations. Working for payday lenders, orchestrating smear campaigns against this internet entrepreneur.
It's like he can't escape it.
It really shows how pervasive these tactics are. It's not just dictators or shady governments. It's corporations, nonprofits, anyone with an agenda and enough money to hire someone like Elwood.
So are you saying there's no such thing as ethical persuasion? Like, is it all just spin?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's something we're going to keep exploring as we get deeper into Elwood's story.
And just when you think, okay, it can't get any weirder, Elwood's story takes this really interesting turn.
Oh, yeah.
He gets caught up in this battle between, of all things, this tiny island nation, Antigua, and the U.S. government.
Antigua.
And get this, he actually ends up using his PR powers for good.
For good, you mean?
Or at least for the underdog,
Okay, I got to hear this.
So picture this, right? Antigua's trying to get millions in losses back from this online gambling dispute with the U.S., and the U.S. is basically ignoring them.
Sounds about right.
So Elwood comes up with this plan, and it's kind of brilliant, actually. He's going to hit the U.S. where it hurts. Copyright laws.
How's he gonna?
Antigua's going to start selling pirated American movies and music.
No way.
I know. The guy's a master strategist, right?
Bold move.
He knows if he can make enough noise, the U.S. will have to respond.
And did it work?
He gets the story picked up by everyone, the New York Times, the whole 9 yards. Suddenly, the U.S. is the bad guy trying to bully this tiny island nation.
Classic David and Goliath.
Exactly. And Elwood's loving every minute of it. He's using the same tactics he honed working for, dictators and stuff. But this time, it feels different, right?
He's fighting for the little guy.
Yeah. But, of course, it's not that simple. Makes you think about right and wrong. Right. Is it ever okay to break the law, even if you're fighting a much bigger power?
It's a tough one.
Elwood seems to think so, and he's definitely willing to push the boundaries. And here's the thing, it works. Antigua eventually gets a settlement from the U.S., and there's no doubt Elwood was a big part of that. This whole thing really shows how PR can be a powerful tool, especially for smaller players going up against the big guys.
It's not just spin. It's knowing how to leverage public opinion, create pressure.
Absolutely. But even with this turn towards the quote-unquote good side, Elwood's demons aren't going away. He's still struggling, and he ends up caught up in this super shady Israeli intelligence operation.
Wait, what?
Yeah. This is where his past really catches up with him, starts working for this firm, side group. They do all sorts of covert stuff. Election interference, online manipulation, you name it.
He never really escaped that world, did he?
It's like he tries to distance himself, but it keeps pulling him back in.
Right.
And the stakes just get higher. It all comes crashing down when the FBI comes knocking. He's caught up in the Mueller investigation.
Wow.
Facing jail time, he's forced to really confront the choices he's made. It's a stark reminder that this world, as alluring as it can be, has very real consequences.
For sure.
But here's the thing. Elwood survives.
Hmm.
He cooperates with the FBI, avoids jail time, and kind of finds this unexpected path to redemption, in a way. He becomes a big advocate for ketamine therapy.
Ketamine?
Yeah, like for mental health. He talks openly about his own struggles, advocates for its use in treating depression, suicidal thoughts, things like that.
That's quite a turnaround.
It really is, and it makes you think about the complexities of a guy like Elwood. He's not just this one-dimensional character. He's flawed, made some really questionable choices, but also capable of empathy, of wanting to make a difference.
It's a good reminder that people can change.
Definitely. So we've gone on this wild ride with Elwood. We've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. It makes you wonder, is political PR ultimately a force for good? Or is it just a tool to be wielded by whoever has the most money, the most power? It's a question without easy answers, and I think that's what Elwood's story really highlights. It's messy, it's complicated, and it leaves us with more questions than answers. And that's what we love to do here at The Deep Dive, right? Make you think, make you question, and maybe even make you a little uncomfortable. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.